I want you to picture this. It is early morning. You are dead asleep. But instead of a birdsong alarm clock or the smell of brewing coffee waking you up, you are jolted awake by the sound of mechanical screeching.
Oh, yeah, that sounds awful.
Right, it is. There is a drone just flying wildly around your bedroom. It is a malfunctioned piece of domestic tech banging into the walls and buzzing like a giant angry hornet.
Which is the ultimate rude awakening.
It really is.
And in the source material we're covering today, the reaction to this is not to hide under the covers. The protagonist, Grace, calmly reaches into her bedside drawer, pulls out a handheld EMP, and just blasts the thing right out of the air.
A handheld electromagnetic pulse gadget. I mean, that is a power move, but it also completely fries the charge port.
Yep.
And it flips the circuit board and briefly knocks out the power to the entire house. And that is how we are introduced to the world of Range Error Behind the Curtain, Chapter 14 by J.M. Britton.
It is such a fantastic opening because it sets the stakes immediately for the listener. We are thrust into a future that is incredibly high-tech, but also intensely chaotic.
Chaos is just the baseline.
Exactly. It's a world where crisis has basically become the new norm. It's just part of the Tuesday morning routine.
And that is exactly our mission for this deep dive today. We are unpacking this specific chapter to look at the fascinating relationship between the characters Grace and her father, Michael.
Right.
We're going to examine their intense debate over the nature of the soul, and we'll look at this futuristic world they live in, which really balances high-tech convenience with some incredibly deep metaphysical questions.
It really is a deep dive in the truest sense of the phrase today. Because on the surface, you just have this domestic scene at the breakfast table.
Yeah, just eating breakfast.
But underneath, they are grappling with quantum mechanics, the definition of consciousness, and what it means to be human.
So let's step right into this kitchen, because the setting itself is essentially a character here. When Grace walks down to breakfast, the description of the house is, well, it's pretty intense. You've got this hydroponic wall and these sleek countertops.
It feels very much like an Apple store meets a high-end greenhouse.
It does, but the detail that really jumped out at me, and I know you clocked this too when we were prepping, was the plates.
Oh, the dissolving plates, yeah.
I read that and my first thought was, I need this in my life right now.
It is a very compelling concept. The smart material plates. You finish your breakfast, you put the plate in the sink, you don't wash it, it literally just dissolves.
It melts down?
Right, it melts down, filters through to a cupboard underneath, gets cleaned and sanitized, and then reformats into a solid, clean plate for the next meal.
It is the absolute end of doing dishes, which sounds amazing. But here's the thing. It feels a little sterile, doesn't it? Like it's almost too efficient.
I think that is exactly the point the author is trying to make. It represents this frictionless life. In this hyper-automated society, they have removed all the mundane barriers. I mean, even the family dog isn't a real dog.
Oh, right. Poppy.
Yes, Poppy. The robotic Roblox assistant dog.
It just spins around cleaning up crumbs?
Exactly. It's mentioned that Grace's mother, who is completely obsessed with cleanliness, tolerates Poppy specifically because it is a utility. It has what they call a puppy feature, but its real job is basically just to be a vacuum cleaner with a personality.
Which is funny, but also kind of sad when you think about it. You have a pet, not for companionship, but for crumb management.
Right.
And before Grace even gets down to this kitchen, we get a glimpse into her mental state during that drone incident. She mentions her ego or dream personality, which she calls 87.
That really establishes her analytical mindset right from the jump. She is categorizing her own subconscious.
Right. But this hyper-efficient house and Grace's analytical mind bring us to a huge contrast, and that is Michael the dad.
Michael is such a fascinating anchor in this scene. He's an overworked engineer for the Corps, so he's not anti-tech at all. I mean, he builds this stuff for a living.
But he pushes back against it at home.
He does. On this specific morning, the house is perfectly capable of cooking breakfast. He can heat the house, clean everything, probably chew the food for you if you wanted. But Michael absolutely insists on making eggs Benedict by hand.
He is standing there poaching eggs in a pot of water manually, and his wife is super annoyed by it. She thinks it's just him being stuck in his old ways.
But for Michael, efficiency is not the ultimate goal. He says something really profound to Grace here. He talks about how doing these menial tasks manually turns them into, quote, moments. He wants to make, quote, something precious lasting.
I found that to be really touching. In a world where your plate literally disappears the second you were done eating off of it, where everything is so transient, he's actively trying to create a memory.
Yes, because when you remove all the friction from life, you might also be removing the texture. If you never have to scrub a plate or walk a real dog, do you lose your connection to the physical reality of the day?
The psychological need for manual labor.
Exactly. Michael is using breakfast as a form of resistance against a world that is becoming way too automated.
So while Michael is having this grounded moment over hollandaise sauce, Grace is operating on a completely different frequency. She is staring at her food, but she is definitely not thinking about the eggs.
No, she is completely checked out of the breakfast experience.
Because she's supposed to be preparing for this audition, but she completely ignores that. Instead, she is fully focused on what she calls the Mobius equation.
This is where the text gets incredibly heavy. Grace is proposing a radical scientific theory right there at the breakfast table. She is trying to solve the hard problem of consciousness using physics.
Her main hypothesis is wild. She argues that negative mass is actually the soul.
Right.
Now, usually in science fiction, when we hear about negative mass, it's being used to power warp drives or hold wormholes open. But she is applying it directly to biology and consciousness.
She starts with the premise that the human mind is a bridge. She argues it acts as a device bridging classical mechanics, which is our everyday world of gravity and solid objects, with quantum mechanics.
The weird, spooky world of subatomic particles.
Exactly. And she compares it to a mobile phone. She says early phones were just hardware using semiconductors to process information. She thinks our biology is an advanced form of that exact same tech.
She gets so specific, too. She points out that neurons and synapses are basically just advanced semiconductors. And she talks about the eyes. She notes that our eyes use organic compounds for light emission and absorption based on electron transitions.
That is quantum physics happening right inside your head. So her argument is if the biology is the hardware, what is the actual signal?
Yeah.
And her answer is that the soul, or this negative mass, is the signal.
She asserts that this negative mass is the missing piece that solves major quantum weirdness. She says it solves entanglement, it solves the uncertainty principle, and she even brings up the monster group.
The monster group is a massive concept in abstract algebra representing supreme symmetry. She is tying the most complex mathematical structures in the universe to human consciousness.
And she ties all of this to the Mobius strip.
Yes. She views the Mobius strip as bending time and eternity in a never-ending loop.
But Michael, the practical engineer dad, brings her down to earth a bit. He points out a flaw, or at least a hurdle.
Right. He says, sure, a Mobius strip implies opening a wormhole, and opening a wormhole is easy. The sticking point is stabilization. Getting back is the hard part.
How do you keep the wormhole open long enough to travel through it without it collapsing?
And Grace's answer is, you use the soul. She believes the soul is the stabilizing force.
It is incredibly heavy stuff for breakfast. But what makes it so readable is that she doesn't just throw out mathematical equations. She backs up her theory using everyday invisible evidence, things we all experience.
The sleep argument is the perfect example of this.
Oh my goodness, the sleep analogy was brilliant. So she asks her dad a simple question. She says, do those 8 hours of sleep pass in the blink of an eye for you?
And we've all felt that. You close your eyes, it is pitch black, then suddenly it is morning. It feels instant.
Grace argues that this is essentially a twin paradox situation.
Right? The relativity concept, where one twin travels near light speed and ages differently. Grace suggests that when we sleep, our negative mass, our soul pops from one place in the universe to another.
She says we are outside of time. And the proof she offers is that falling feeling you get right before you wake up or when you're drifting off.
The hypnic jerk.
Yes, I hate that feeling. It is like missing a step on a staircase in the dark.
Grace complete reframes it. She calls it travel lag. She says that physical jolt is the shock of your soul slamming back into your body after popping across the universe.
She visualizes it as a Dali painting, or a glimpse of four-dimensional space from a three-dimensional processor. Our human brains just cannot comprehend where the soul went, so we interpret the return as falling.
It's a gorgeous way to turn a biological quirk into evidence of a cosmic journey. She also does this with human emotions. She reframes emotion entirely as physics.
She argues that things like gut feelings or having chemistry with someone or intuition are just unscientific names for the interaction of negative mass.
It is the literal push and pull of relationships. She equates it to magnetic attraction or repulsion. When you vibe with someone, it is your negative mass aligning.
Which naturally brings us to the music analogy. This is a crucial, specific detail in the chapter and arguably the most beautiful part of her theory.
I completely agree. Grace describes musicians as coders of normal and negative mass.
Coders. That word choice is so deliberate. A software coder writes a script to change a computer's state. A musician writes a melody to change a human's state.
Exactly. She points out that sound waves aren't confined by gravity. They operate differently. She says music creates a romance where opposing forms of matter meet.
And when they meet, it alters brain chemistry and alignment.
She has this great quote where she says musicians can recode thoughts and feelings in seconds.
And it is completely true. You can be in a terrible mood, feeling totally disconnected, and then you hear a specific chord progression, and your entire emotional state shifts instantly. Grace is arguing that the musician is actively engineering your soul in that moment.
They are aligning your negative mass. It elevates art from just being entertainment to being a fundamental physical force in the universe.
Which is such a vital concept when you zoom out and look at the broader context of the world they're actually living in, because the state of their world is pretty grim.
It is a dark reality. The text explicitly notes that crisis had become the new norm.
Everything is about optimization and survival. Like the transportation system, they use these travel pods that run on insulated, high-powered magnetic lines. It is all about time optimization.
Right, and priority is given to enter. The system is rigged for efficiency above all else.
But the environmental decay is the real kicker. Grace reveals the darker side of this future when she mentions the sky. The atmosphere is completely gone.
It has been replaced by a clunky glass hydrodome.
They are literally living inside a terrarium.
And this sparks a major critique of innovation from Grace. She notes that despite all this hypergrowth, their research and development is totally backwards.
Yeah, she says they focus on clunky traditional materials instead of looking at nature's perfection. She specifically brings up photosynthesis. Nature figured out perfect solar energy capture eons ago, but humanity is stuck with poor solar power storage.
They engineered dissolving plates and robot dogs to clean up crumbs,
Yeah.
but they failed to protect the atmosphere. It is the ultimate range error.
They optimize the wrong variables.
Exactly.
So you have this incredible synthesis happening in the scene. On one hand, you have the beautiful, terrifying potential of the human mind to bridge quantum mechanics and bend time. And on the other hand, you have the stark reality of living in a fragile artificial hydrodome.
The infinite internal world versus the broken external world.
And just as the conversation hits its absolute peak, just as Grace is connecting subatomic particles and bending time and Michael is really tracking with her, the whole thing gets cut off.
The ultimate cliffhanger. Mom storms in.
Mom storms in and cuts the deep dive completely short. The mundane reality of the morning routine just crashes right over this profound metaphysical breakthrough.
It's abrupt, but it is so realistic.
So as we wrap up our look at Chapter 14 today, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought derived from Grace's theory.
It is a big one.
We talked about her idea that our intuition and our gut feelings are really just our negative mass, our soul interacting with the physics of the universe. It's magnetic push and pull.
Right, the quantum alignment of our choices.
But if that is true, what does that actually mean for the concept of free will? If every feeling of chemistry or intuition is just a physical reaction of negative mass, are we actually making any choices at all? Or are we just variables in a massive quantum equation that is balancing itself out?
Are you choosing to listen to this, or is it just your negative mass aligning with the audio waves?
It makes you wonder who is really writing the code. Something to think about the next time you get that sudden falling feeling right before you go to sleep.
Enjoy the travel lag.